Well, I have Rise analyst Dr. Constance Ikokwu again to talk more about what we have highlighted earlier on, women in politics. And it's an interesting one. First, let's jump in on the Ninth Assembly. People were amazed to the extent that they wanted to know how people voted, because we had a lot of great politicians there. You had Stella Odua, you had a lot of other great women who were there from Nigeria, Southeast, and even some northern parts. But that bill didn't see the light of day.
Yeah, it didn't see the light of day, and I'm glad that Dr. Betta Edu mentioned gender bill, because it needs to see the light of day now. It needs to be reconsidered. I think the problem is it's an issue of the philosophy of the country, the leadership model and philosophy. I'm going to expatiate. I'm reading this book now called Culture, Gender, and African Women Leadership. It's written by three fantastic African women, one from Nigeria, Regina Amadi Njoku, one from Uganda, Elizabeth Wanga, and the other from Zimbabwe, Leti Chiwara. They did an empirical research and then also interviewed so many women and put it together in this book. And it's so relevant to what we are discussing now. It looks at how, I think the overarching premise of the book is that culture directs gender. Gender drives politics, and then politics directs development. What does that mean? It means that the culture you practice or you choose to practice will affect how you treat the genders, male and female. And then that will also affect the way you play politics. And then the way you play politics will impact your development outcomes. Because if you decide to exclude a huge part of your population because of only gender, then it will affect their contribution to your development goals. So coming back to your question, so why do they do these things? Why do they not understand the simple fact that you need to include women? It's about your development paradigm, which this book questions. What is your philosophy about development? Is it squarely and purely the Western patriarchal democratic system and the Western dominated religions that focus on male? Or do you have positive elements of traditional African cultures that actually give women access to power sharing with men and decision making? If you do this and include it in your governance type, then you will have no problem. No one will need to explain to you that it's important to include your women, to get them to have access to power and decision making, because they have something to contribute to society.
Quite an offensive, cultural idea sometimes, and sometimes it's a shame we try to run away from it. So I'm happy that you've started off by building on three key, tripod
blocks, yes.
Because now culture. Do you think that politically speaking, some of the cultural drawbacks can be fixed through legislations?
They can, but the people that are in the legislature have to understand. If they don't know, you have to teach them. That's where advocacy comes in. I'll give you an example. I went to the East recently, and I went with my cousin somewhere to inspect something. And then it's a school actually, and beside the school there was a prayer house. And then we went in, and someone came to greet us, and they said it's a woman that owns that prayer house. It's run by a woman, it's owned by a woman. So traditionally, women could own prayer houses, and people accede to their leadership, and nothing happens. That same woman, when she comes to Abuja, you then start hearing stories like she cannot be a leader politically because she's a woman, because that you start giving gender-based excuses and discrimination. So traditionally, there are partnership, there is partnership between men and women. We have to go back to that. Because so this book calls it dual sex governance. There's a lot to benefit, from men and women working together.
Now, one big place we just might be lucky to have, an activation will be grassroots governance, the local government. How well can they key into this sensitization, especially on cultural issues, so that people can start, because they are the closest. So if I have to see my councillor, who's a woman, a very young lady, speak to us about some cultural issues, and you say, oh, wait a minute, I think I know. I used to see her when, when I'm trying to expatiate on this. So grassroots governance is something that we should also look into.
Suleiman, the interesting thing is that if you go to the grassroots, you will be amazed. At the grassroots level, the traditional African culture is working side by side with the Western democratic system. Because when you go and see the unions and how they organize themselves, in some parts of Nigeria, at least where I come from, the women are powerful. They have their unions, they have their political spaces where they decide and men cannot do anything about it. So they already know about that. But then when you then go to the local government office where you don't have the Western democratic system, you start hearing stories about, oh, you're a woman. And then you wonder, how do we even do this to ourselves? So again, the philosophy, overall philosophy of the government has to change from the top to the bottom. The rural people already have an idea. They have not lost completely those traditions. So if you give them space, if you give them support, they will definitely bloom with those ideas. And then you have to escalate those ideas to the federal level. It's not only for the bottom.
No, I still want to stay on the grassroots advocacy drive. The NOA, National Orientation Agency, has offices in every local government, 774. That is huge. Let's start looking at how best they can help drive this awareness, this kind of sensitization that will help reorient people, orientate people as to the importance of every child, irrespective of gender.
It's a lot of work, but I think the problem comes in political circles because we have the state legislatures, right? They're the ones making laws for the state. And then we have the federal legislatures making, the National Assembly making laws for all of us. Yes, there is a lot of work to be done in terms of advocacy, but in terms of changing your development philosophy, what do you want? Do you want to be a Western country, or do you want to pull from your traditional cultures and say, you know what, there are certain things we've realized we have that we have abandoned. Let's bring them back. So for instance, at the state legislature, we can begin to put money into women groups that go and advocate and say, you know what, in certain areas, this is what women want. This is how we want to be included. It's a lot of talking, is a lot of sharing of ideas, is a lot of advocacy. It needs to be done, but most importantly at the federal level, because that is why people have no ownership of Nigeria. Nigeria is a thing that everybody wants to abuse. They have no ownership because at the local level...
When you say most especially the federal level, but I thought they should start from the grassroots, from bottom up.
Yes, there is work to be done at the bottom. There is also a lot of work to be done at the top. Look at the National Assembly. They were the ones that threw out the gender bills last year, right?
Because they come from a local government that hasn't actually given that orientation to the people from the grassroots. So we're talking about the first cause.
I don't think so, actually. When you go to the villages, you see the women, the market women, and the poor people, the farmers and everything. They are still better custodians of our traditions and cultures than we that are in the cities, speaking grammar and, selling ideas that are not in our best interest. So we ourselves have to understand, what are we doing actually? The leadership models that we are emphasizing, is it good for us? Is it not great that men and women work together? Because like I said, some time ago, Nigerian women are smart. African women are very smart. You actually lose by not giving them the opportunity to contribute to governance. I mean, there's a lot that can be done. So we're hoping that the president, Dr. Betta Edu, spoke glowingly of the president and his determination to sort of have a cabinet and a government that supports women. We're really hoping to see that. The country will be better off for it.
The last time Nigerians saw a fine move for women from any first lady was with Mariam Babangida. Do you think the first ladies across states have been doing a good job of sensitizing and empowering women?
I don't think it is a topic that most women think about. And remember that there's always this argument that women are actually the ones that are the gatekeepers of patriarchy. In most cases, they don't even understand how it hurts them or how it destroys, their own powers in society or what they can do for society. Again, it's not an issue in many states that anybody wants to talk about. Religion, for instance, is a big issue, or it sort of interferes in gender matters. So the policies that are being made in some states are driven by religion rather than development paradigms and models. So it is something, again, Dr. Betta said, advocacy, talking. There has to be a deliberate policy by the government. The government has to fund those projects. You have to really fund it and pursue it to make sure that it happens. It will not happen by wishing it.
Dr. Constance Ikokwu, always a delight speaking with you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We'll do this again tomorrow. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sulaiman. Bye-bye.